vying for that with 15 total all signed up and ready to go, including 2 in the feature match era we're going to pop over to right now. Friend of the stream and caster Kyle Mendoza is going to be on the right-hand side playing his Dimir Control deck, where Connor, who is normally a standard player but found himself in Pioneer Land, is going to be wielding Boros Burn today.
Yeah, this is a really interesting matchup, not particularly because of the decks, but rather because of the people. Kyle himself states that Connor is most likely his op for the season. He did lose to him at the Store Champs playing Standard last time to what was probably a pretty favorable matchup. It was Toxic versus Dimir Control or Dimir Midrange, so I think he's looking to get some revenge here.
Definitely with the deck that Kyle's running today, since he's playing Dimir Control and Pioneer as well.
Yeah, Kyle himself said it's more or less his standard version, so we can expect... I think he's on the Doomsday Excruciator plan, so Doomsday Excruciator, Jace, the Perfected Mind, stuff like that. Try and get some mid-rangey value, but also ultimately one of the game plans is to just combo your opponent and mill them out.
So unsurprisingly, we're going to see Kyle on a deck that wants to win by milling people.
Mill in every format.
So it does look like Kyle starts off with the Undercity Sewers, going to be getting a Surveil and putting that one in the graveyard. Meanwhile, Connor over on Boros Burn. This is more of an aggressive style deck, as we see Kumano faces Kakazan hit the board, but this one has gotten just a couple of different tweaks from the mono red decks that we've seen previously.
Yeah, Kumano faces Kakazan, a mainstay in most of the mono red decks, or primarily red decks that we've seen. Being able to ping your opponent for 1, it's also great to trigger prowess because it's only 1 mana. You just kind of set up your next turn, being able to get a +1/+1 counter on the next creature you cast, and it becomes a creature body, which is pretty relevant too.
Yeah, so we'll see here. We're going to have a passing of the turn from Kyle. We're going to see a Monastery Swiftspear immediately get changed the equation over there from Kyle's side. Just a very quick and easy counter spell, because that is going to be targeting not only just a cost that is 2 or less, but also a red spell, so it's got all its bases covered.
Ooh, change the equation. Normally you would consider this to be a sideboard card, but in a lot of cases it just does its work in the main board as well.
Yeah, and I guess that's where Kyle's going to be running it this time around, as we do have both of our players at 19 health after a quick ping from the Kumano and a ping from the Painland over on Connor's side. We are just going to have a Hired Claw following up that Monastery Swiftspear and a passing of the turn. Kyle, in the meantime, is going to untap and then cycles away the Censor. And ooh, it looks like Kyle unfortunately did not find land number 3. Was already on a mulligan to 6. And I think he might have binned a land on turn 1 off of that Surveil.
Yeah, I think he binned a pathway. You know, hindsight 2020 might not have been the best play there, unfortunately.
Yeah, so now we have a flipped Etching Kumano on this Hired Claw that can always grow itself. We also see a Eidolon of the Great Revels and yet another Hired Claw hitting the battlefield here from Connor. So we have a bunch of aggressive things, and most importantly, these Hired Claws are going to see each other attacking. So this is going to be pinging Kyle down for 2 on an attack, and then plus the damage that comes through with this 3.
Yeah, Hired Claw. Oh, skewer the critics, going for Kyle's face.
All right, so altogether, it looks like Kyle is going to be taking a brunt of damage down to 11, whereas Connor's going to be pinging himself with that land all the way down to 18. But now Kyle, very hard pressed to find land number 3, and does. But what is Kyle's response here to a bunch of red weenies?
Yeah, not sure what he can do here, unfortunately. If he had Path to Peril or something, this would be the time to play it, but I don't believe that's in the deck. I see a Jace, the Perfected Mind, in hand, but he does have to ping himself to play it right now, if that's the play.
And pinging yourself down to 9 would be pretty dangerous right now, but Kyle is going to wind up doing that one. So Jace, the Perfected Mind, does hit the battlefield, and that will potentially blank one of these attackers if Kyle so chooses to plus up the Jace. It looks like that is going to be the mode here. So the Etching of Kumano is not going to be able to deal any combat damage this turn, since it's -3, -0. These 2 Hired Claws still represent at least 4, if not 5 damage.
I think Connor just placed that Den of the Bugbear untapped. But it's not a fast land, it should be.
No, it should be tapped, and it looks like maybe figuring that one out right now. We may need to remind Connor that one is not a fast land, that it needs to be of the first 2 lands, not the first 3. But that Kumano faces Kakazan can be played either way. But it does look like Eric is going to be going out there just to let them know that that doesn't come into play untapped right now, and it may change what Connor wants to do before declaring attacks, because unfortunately this means that you are unable to activate one of those Hired Claws and buff them up. There we go. Just a quick little fixie there is that Den of the Bugbear stays tapped, and that Sacred Foundry is going to be tapped instead, but this is still going to be a swing for all the way down to 5 because of that Kumano coming into play, and Kyle's in the danger zone right now, Eric.
Yeah, this is kind of what we expect out of, you know, the mid-range versus super fast aggro matchup, unfortunately. Kyle needs to have some sort of answer, but unfortunately he's been a little bit light on those. Any sort of removal would definitely get him in a much better spot, but it seems like he's a little hard-pressed to find any. Let's see here. Kyle checking out his hand. He's still thinking really hard about it.
Yeah, he did minus Jace, so going to mill Connor for 3 and then just draw a single card there. So definitely looking for some sort of card draw. Has a backup Jace in hand and has a swamp for turn. But does Kyle have any sort of sweepers in the main deck? The answer is no for that one. And it's going to be Connor. Boros Burn. No burn spells needed besides that one Skewer the Critics is going to be taking game number 1 over Kyle's Dimir Control.
Yeah, that is a little bit unfortunate of a start for Kyle here. A little bit hard to stop any sort of aggressive red deck once they get the wheels turning, but
You think I know?
yeah, you kind of have to have the removal at the right time, but
This is a fake format.
unfortunately for Kyle, he was not able to find anything.
Yeah, and despite the deck being named Boros Burn, there was only one burn spell, besides, I guess, Kumano's technically a pinger. Oh, that was cast from Connor that game. So if Kyle is going to be going into the sideboard, and if this is more akin to what he was running in Standard, we're probably going to wind up seeing a bunch of these -2/-2 type effects. I mean, I know like Malicious Eclipse is one of the more popular ones right now. Glistening Deluge won't work against what Connor's doing unless there's some white creatures in there as well. But you already mentioned some Pioneer All-Stars like Path of Peril. Obviously, Fatal Pushes, Cut Downs, any sort of spot removal is going to be great against these creature packages. But you have to think that if Kyle knows that this is going to be a burn-based deck, he's probably also going to want to keep in some amount of counter magic and maybe looking towards duress over Thoughtseize.
Yeah, definitely. Thoughtseize trying to take his lone life down faster is not really where you want to be. Connor didn't show it, but he also has Idol on in the deck.
I know, I was
so
here.
Trying to play around that as well, I think, will be a little crucial in this matchup.
Yeah, meanwhile, on Connor's side, we're probably going to wind up having a plethora of just red spells in the main deck, and a lot of the red sideboard tech is going to wind up being removal. So if Kyle's going to be playing nothing but Jaces and giant Doomsday Excruciators, then we're probably not going to see any sort of like creature-based burn removal coming in from Connor, but I wouldn't be surprised if we wind up seeing some different sort of sideboard tech, like some of the white removal that can wind up dealing with those Jaces from Kyle's side.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty interested. I think both our players are shuffling up. We can go back to the game screen here. A little bit curious what each of them sideboarded in here. Let me see if I can find Kyle's standard list, actually. That might give us some insight as to what version he's running.
It'd be very interesting if Kyle did just completely port over his standard list, like on a 1-for-1. Maybe not the highest power level deck that you could potentially play at Pioneer end of the month. However, not necessarily a bad thing to be running either, considering the power level of standard and the number of just the overall number of standard level cards or standard cards in the format of Pioneer that have made such a huge splash. I mean, we've already seen things like Unholy Annex being extremely powerful in Pioneer.
Oh, definitely. Unholy Annex tying together multiple decks right now in multiple formats. But definitely, Kyle has definitely made at least some changes here. We know that we saw a censor here, so definitely.
himself out.
There is at least something.
No, it's like Kyle had to go open the back door for somebody. Knocking at the back door that was unfortunately closed here. So just plays it top water grave and passes. Meanwhile, Connor going to start off very similarly to last time. Is going to be throwing down the Kumano faces Kakazan off of the able to be untapped Den of the Bugbear this time.
Yeah. Connor learning from his last game, putting his lands in the correct order. Very important. I see a Swift Spear in hand. Is that a Fanatical Fire? No, that's Hard Claw.
Yeah, I think that's just another higher claw. Fanatical Firebrand would be interesting to see. It is in Standard. Foundations kind of let that card get reprinted, but it is going to just be another higher claw. This one's going to be entering with a +1/+1 counter because of that Kumano faces Kakazan. And double hired claw. All right. And we're going to wind up having Shioljin Edict looking like Kyle was pointing that it's going to hit the battlefield while the other one is on the stack. So it gets rid of the more powerful hired claw, but still leaves Connor with just a singleton lizard.
Yeah. Kyle Debating whether or not he wants to play that land tapped. I think he has another 2-mana removal, like go for the throat or something. So probably thinking that extra mana isn't worth the 2 life right here in this matchup.
So now before attack declared, Shieldred's Edict number 2 is going to wind up hitting the battlefield. That gets rid of the other Hired Claw and only leaves Connor with the flipped Etching of Mono. And this is kind of how we expected things to be going from Kyle's side post.
3 mana. Oh, Screaming Nemesis is here.
Oh, well, speaking of standard power level cards.
Screaming Nemesis, a very important card in mono red and red base decks in standard right now. Being able to turn off your opponent's life gain and making their blocks just all the worse is really interesting in a card. At its worst, it's just a 3-mana 3/3 with haste, which is already just decent rate. But being able to shoot your own Screaming Nemesis and get extra damage while also turning off your opponent's life gain is kind of disgusting, to put it lightly.
Yeah, that interaction is extremely cool when you figure it out, but then when you're across the board from it, it's not necessarily as cool as you think it is. We see Kyle, meanwhile, shocking himself, playing a Jace to Perfected Mind, and going to plus up on that Screaming Nemesis, so there'd be no damage coming through from the attacks here. Did just want to double check with the life totals. I had accidentally marked Connor down 1 life instead of Kyle, so Kyle went down to 14 from that attack, and then shocking with Jace goes all the way down to 12. Meanwhile, Connor shocks in that Sacred Foundry, plays a Monastery Swiftspear, and is at 18 currently, and it looks like everything's going towards Jace.
Oh, play with fire. Targeting, I'm assuming Kyle, but...
Yeah, this looks like target Kyle, get a scry, that prowess is up the Monastery Swiftspear, and that'll be enough to kill Jace. But oh, everything's going at Kyle, it looks like.
Lightning Helix, that's 2 prowess triggers for the Swiftspear, so 5 power coming through on the ground.
Is Kyle just down to 2?
Yeah. Wait. Yeah, there we go.
The opponent's, it looks like a player's just making sure that damage is calculated on the iPad there.
Oh.
And Kyle again plussing up on Screaming Nemesis. What does he got? Oh, it's a Meat Hook Massacre. That's pretty good.
It is pretty good. Meat Hook Massacre. Unfortunately, he's only able to expert equals 2, so he doesn't get rid of the Nemesis here.
That's fine, because this Nemesis is in check from Jace right now.
Yeah. And Kyle will gain 2 life here, so Connor won't be able to kill Kyle just on his 1 top deck.
We had Connor going up to 21 off of that Lightning Helix as well. So like you said, off 1 top deck, looks like Connor might not be able to kill him unless it's a Boltwave.
Nope, that's Connor 1.
All right, so Lightning Bolt in Pioneer.
Lava Spike, what a good card.
Wait, what the fuck?
And Kyle at 1 untaps. Do you have a removal spell for Screaming Nemesis? All right, we plus up the
Still not,
Jace.
apparently.
We have a Censor in hand that's not going to be enough to counteract like a 1-mana burn spell. Is it a Cling to Dust and a Memory Deluge in Kyle's hand? So, okay, we have options here.
Yeah, he has things to do. Path to Peril, kind of interesting, I see in his hand as well.
Oh, that might be what it was. I thought that might have been a Cling to Dust, but Path of Peril, not as great on this board.
Nope. Not really, unfortunately. Does not get rid of the Nemesis. And, Kyle's a little afraid of that man land getting up and running, so a land is also a live draw. Oh, going to Demolition Field, the Den of the Bugbear here.
All right, so we get the Demolition Field. That's going to just let Connor replace that with a basic. But most importantly, that is it's going to be interesting now for Kyle. 2 mana representing any number of removal spells, potentially something like a Change the Equation, which can counteract basically any burn spell from Connor's side. Connor empty-handed, though. Top deck burn spell, you pretty much just flip it.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious what Kyle's got right now, because otherwise I think normally he would choose to wait to pop that Demolition Field when and if Connor goes to try and animate the manland.
Boltwave!
No. Boltwave off the top. Wait, Kyle's thinking about something.
He's going to cycle Censor, dig for a life gain spell.
Cling to Dust? Cling to Dust?
No, that's not going to be enough. All right, so it was too fast, too furious. Boros Burn and Connor, Coalition LOL, going to be taking the match 2-0. Boros Burn versus Dimir Control and Pioneer goes Boros' way. And more importantly, the rivalry between Kyle and Connor goes Connor's way yet again.